So I'm kind of annoyed by a lot of the tutorials on OBS that are either just way too simplified for a specific computer or um, just go over everything as if you don't know what you're talking about. So, right, with this window, you can click on everything. You know how to drag and drop, but in the right here, the enabling preview takes up resources or doesn't. Um, to run in game, if you click on any of the devices and if you click on something specific in here, you can also click on it. The filters is how you change stuff. So that's how I have like the green screen going on. That's either chroma key or color key, whichever you prefer. Or properties, and this is the actual physical thing that it's interacting with. So like the camera, right? That aside, audio, always check your audio beforehand because you can really mess stuff up, and you can even be getting feedback here and not record stuff. So just always check it before you stream for the first time. But for the output here, you'll notice that I'm using software. And the way that you can tell whether software is, so if you're using either Intel, AMD, or an NVIDIA GPU, there's going to be something. So NVIDIA, I think it's like NVENC, or just the NV is for NVIDIA. AMD, it's usually just AMD. And then Intel, I think it's like RAD or something. I don't know. But that's going to be your hardware and that's your GPU. So generally speaking, it's not actually going to impact your GPU's performance much, just because it's very efficient. You got to remember that within hardware, acceleration, there's actual physical like equations basically that are just designed for specific tasks. So good hardware encoding is going to be way more efficient, and it's really not going to impact performance much. That being said, I'm using a CPU because I just have a very good one for editing and streaming and stuff. So the CPU just has a lot of headroom for gaming. That being said, if I'm playing like Arma or something with a whole bunch of NPCs, then yeah, I'm gonna want to lower my CPU settings for streaming. But you'll notice that here, I use the probably too slow. Oh, I should set this one actually back to 0 so that it goes on auto. But probably too slow is like the maximum setting for quality over performance. But if you want to just lower that by 1, it helps a lot in games. But everything in here, so you either have hardware or software. Some people will also prefer CPUs, and if you're just recording and you're not playing any games or anything like that, you can just rewatch the videos with different settings to check which one's the best. Basically higher numbers, if you have a better system, higher numbers are going to just always be more efficient. Even though you're technically going to process more data by default, it's just designed for the software. The actual algorithms are significantly more efficient for hardware that's designed for it. So you're going to have some slightly different options here. Constant CBR is constant bitrate or variable bitrate. You're not really going to want to mess much past that. The actual bitrate you have, you're going to want to base it around the thing that you're streaming to. And then for recording, you're going to want to base it around the drive that you're streaming to and how much data you want to use up. But for streaming, I'm going for Kick. They have a limit of about 8,000. So I'm going to go for 7,500. That's a bit below it, so it's just nice and consistent. And then for something like YouTube, you're probably going to want to go like 6,000. Same for Kick or Twitch, say. And that can make a big difference because the worse encoding options are also going to look significantly worse because less data, they're going to have less to work with, and it's just not going to look as good. It's going to look more pixely. That's why you notice that the stuff in my background looks quite good compared to, say, a stream you have. And that's going to be the main thing. And you can actually just lower the resolution as well as another option. Depending on where you're streaming, you might not actually be able to, or the viewers won't be able to view something at a lower setting than what you're actually streaming, right? Kick does encode for that, but if you're streaming to YouTube, for example, a lot of people who are on their phones aren't going to want to look at too high of a bit rate. So you might want to go down to 720p for that reason. 1440p and higher is great for editing to have more to work with, and it looks better once you encode it, just because, again, it's more data to work with, but it's going to be quite intensive. And yeah. what I've got in the background is just wallpaper editor. If you want, you can even just use PNGs on the side. The more things you have blocking the screen, the better it looks. So if you see right now, it looks like this. But if I max it out, suddenly everything looks a lot cleaner, right? But, you know, if you take your screen, you lower this a bit, and then put something else just behind here, you know, it's going to look a lot better as well. And so with that, you can have, you know, your latest followers, stuff like that, a simple graphic. If you have too much animation, that, though, again, it takes away from the game. And a lot of video games are designed to look good through encoding anyway. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. The other settings to mess with, so just keep track of everything that you do because you may have to reverse it at some point. But recording and streaming are different. You want it to be in advanced mode. It's really not that much more complicated. The MKV is just a better file than MP4 for recording, but MP4 is kind of a standard, I think, for things like YouTube. Audio, just higher bit rates are better. But yeah, if we look over here, your settings, you don't need too much. Let's see. Oh yeah, you can use hotkeys over here, and this is to do things like start scenes, stop streams, change windows, mute stuff, and that's good for like if you need to censor something, if you're like walking around, see stuff live. Browser source hardware acceleration, anything hardware, color format. So for recording, it can be nice to use higher settings, so when you then later edit the colors, it's a much smoother transition. You don't get weird like deep fried effects over your stuff. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful, and I'm not going to prolong the video too much. Like and subscribe.